Hi there. Let's talk Scott Peterson. Why? Because he has a hearing. He's requesting a new trial. It's coming up on February 25th in San Mateo Superior Court in California. So I have three questions for you. Why does Scott Peterson want a new trial? Will he get a new trial? And who decides if he gets a new trial? Hi there. I'm Michele Hagan. I'm a legal analyst and a former prosecutor. You may have seen me providing analysis for the Elizabeth Holmes trial or the Ghislaine Maxwell trial and a host of other ones. So you can go to my About, click on the About section, and you can read all about my details. So I'll leave that to you. But anyway, so let's get into Scott Peterson. So let me give you a background. So if you recall, back in 2004, he was convicted of murdering his wife, Laci Peterson, and his unborn child, Connor. Since the trial, he has learned that one of the jurors, juror number 7, failed to disclose some information. In particular, she failed to disclose that she had been involved in a domestic violence case with her boyfriend at that time. She was pregnant at that time. He pled to one of the counts of battery. He had to go to counseling, surrender a gun, and have a no contact with her for 3 years. She also failed to disclose that she had been involved in prior litigation, and that relates to an incident, a restraining order case, back in 2000 against her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. I know it gets messy, but stay with me, okay? So we have two things that she failed to disclose. Why is that important? Because Scott Peterson, like any defendant, has a right to a fair trial. Fair trial includes all 12 jurors being impartial, not having a bias. So do you think that juror number 7 would have any bias or fail to have the ability to be impartial if she had been beaten while she was pregnant? Laci was pregnant at the time with Connor. So the time, how this works is attorneys have an opportunity to ask jurors questions in voir dire. That's how we find out whether or not a juror can be fair and impartial. And in the Peterson murder trial, the jurors were given written questionnaires. And juror number 7 didn't disclose this on the questionnaire. And you're specifically asked, each one of these jurors is asked, have you been a victim of a crime? Or have you been involved in prior litigation? And a bunch of other questions. Then based on that information that the juror gives us, we look at the questionnaire and we think, oh, is this juror going to have a bias against my client? Or is this juror going to be able to be impartial, meaning objective, and just make their decision based on the evidence and the law that's presented to them? So then if we see that there's some question there, we ask them when we have the opportunity to ask these jurors questions and follow up on it and find out. But the information wasn't provided in the questionnaire. Scott Peterson and his counsel found out about this years later. So he's requesting that he gets a new trial based on juror misconduct. There's a case in California at the appellate level that has found that when a juror fails to disclose that they had been a victim of a crime, that constitutes prejudicial misconduct. So what Peterson has to prove is that the conduct is prejudicial, not just any kind of juror misconduct where a juror accidentally talks to a witness or it is doing something, possibly doing a crossword puzzle, that kind of misconduct. We're not talking about that. We're talking about prejudicial misconduct, and that relates to whether or not this juror can be impartial. So let me give you some examples here. So say, for instance, you are sitting on the panel and you're asked whether or not you could make a decision on a death penalty case, and you're opposed to the death penalty. That makes you that shows that you cannot be fair. You cannot be impartial. So you would be excused because the Peterson case, they were seeking the death penalty. What if you were a juror and you had, gosh forbid, a relative who was murdered, and you were asked in voir dire and on that written jury question whether or not you or a family member had been a victim of crime, just like juror number 7 had? And you said yes. Well, it's more than likely one of the attorneys would have challenged and asked to have you excused because of that experience would show or possibly show that you couldn't be impartial. I mean, these are difficult cases to sit on anyway, but when you're pregnant and you've been beaten by a boyfriend and you're sitting on a case where the victim was, it was alleged that the victim's husband killed her while she was pregnant, that's a tough one. Can you be impartial in that circumstance? And that's why we ask so many questions of jurors, both in writing with the questionnaires and also when we stand up and ask you questions. Yeah, I know it's not fun. You don't want us prying, but the defendant has a right to a fair trial. Okay? That means every single juror has to be impartial. Okay, so let's talk about will he get a new trial? That's the next question. So, will he get a new trial? So if he can show, it's a bit of unusual procedure in this case, right? Because the defense has the burden of proof, or otherwise known as the petitioner, petitioning the court for a new trial, to have the conviction thrown out, and then he has an opportunity for a new trial, and then he can present whatever evidence he has, and apparently it's been reported that there's new evidence regarding a burglary taking place at the same time that Laci went missing. So maybe it's someone else who did it than Scott Peterson. So, question is, will he get a new trial? Quick answer here, I think it's more than likely he's going to get a new trial if he can show. So it starts out with the defense putting on their witnesses, and I'll do a video on that, on who the witnesses are and what I expect the testimony to be. So once they put their witnesses on and they show that there is misconduct that she failed to disclose, prejudicial misconduct, then the presumption is that there's misconduct. Then the prosecution, in this case, would be called the respondent. The prosecutor, has to now show that there is an absence of prejudice, which is a really steep hill to climb. Okay? And so who makes the decision here as to who decides whether or not Scott Peterson gets a new trial? Who decides whether or not his Sixth Amendment right to an impartial jury, to a fair trial, has been violated because of prejudicial juror misconduct? Who decides that? The judge. It's Judge Anne Christine Masulo in San Mateo Superior Court. She will hear testimony from the witnesses, review all the exhibits, apply the law, and make a decision and decide whether Scott Peterson was given a fair trial. If she finds that he was not given a fair trial, then Scott Peterson is facing a new trial. So what do you think? Do you think you could be impartial if you were in juror number 7's shoes? Do you think Scott Peterson got a fair trial? I want to know what you think, because this is simply my opinion. So, I hope to be providing more analysis as the case goes on in other cases. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like, subscribe button, and I look forward to reading your comments and connecting with you soon. Thanks again for watching.